The crack of a whip split the air as Abigail Thornton pressed herself against the side of the wagon, her hands shaking as she calculated the distance to the ground rushing by below. She knew what awaited her at the next stop, another beating from her employer, who had purchased her debt and claimed ownership over her very existence. Her decision was made in a heartbeat when the wagon slowed at a bend in the trail. With one desperate prayer, she leaped into the unknown. It was 1875 in the unforgiving New Mexico territory, and Abigail was done being someone else's property. The impact knocked the wind from her lungs as she tumbled down an embankment, rocks tearing at her threadbare dress. She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the stinging pain in her palms and knees, and ran blindly into the sagebrush. Behind her, she could hear Jasper Wilkes's angry shouts, the man who had bought her father's debt after his death and claimed her as payment. "Get back here, you ungrateful wench! I'll find you. I'll make you regret this." Abigail pushed forward, her heart hammering against her ribs, lungs burning with each breath of the dry desert air. She had no plan beyond escape, no destination, no supplies, nothing but the clothes on her back, and a desperate will to survive. She had covered perhaps a quarter-mile when her foot caught on a hidden rock, sending her sprawling into the dust. As she struggled to rise, the sound of approaching hoofbeats froze her blood. Jasper had mounted his horse to pursue her. She would never outrun him now. But when she looked up, squinting against the harsh sunlight, the rider was not Jasper. A tall man with broad shoulders sat atop a chestnut quarter horse, watching her with piercing blue eyes beneath the brim of a well-worn hat. "Please," she gasped, "help me." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, approaching cautiously as though she were a frightened animal. "You running from something, miss?" Before she could answer, angry shouts echoed across the terrain. The stranger glanced in that direction, then back at her bruised face and the marks on her wrists where rope had rubbed her skin raw. "Please," Abigail repeated, tears welling in her eyes. The man made his decision quickly. He helped her to her feet, then lifted her onto his horse with ease. He'd just mounted behind her when Jasper Wilkes appeared over the rise, his face contorted with rage. "That's my property you're handling, mister. The girl belongs to me." The stranger's arm tightened protectively around Abigail's waist. "No person belongs to another in this territory," he said, his voice low and steady. "I paid good money for her father's debt. She's mine by right." The stranger's free hand moved to rest on the revolver at his hip. "You're safe now," he murmured to Abigail, before addressing Wilkes again. "I suggest you ride on, friend. This matter is concluded." Jasper's hand twitched toward his own weapon, but something in the stranger's eyes made him reconsider. "This ain't over," he spat, then wheeled his horse around and rode back toward his wagon. Once Wilkes was out of sight, Abigail felt herself trembling uncontrollably, the full weight of her situation crashing down upon her. "Thank you," she whispered. "Who are you?" "Name's Zachariah Quincy," he replied, nudging his horse into a gentle walk, keeping his arms secure around her waist. "Friends call me Zach. And you are?" "Abigail Thornton," she said, her voice barely audible over the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats. "Well, Miss Thornton, there's a town about 10 miles west. I can take you there, help you find safe passage to wherever you're headed." Abigail's heart sank. "I have nowhere to go, Mr. Quincy. My father died 6 months ago, and Mr. Wilkes claimed me as payment for his debts. I've been working in his household since, but—" She couldn't bring herself to describe the escalating abuse. Zachariah's jaw tightened. "No need to explain. I've seen his kind before." After a moment of consideration, he added, "My ranch is a half-day's ride from here. You can stay there until you decide what's next. I have a housekeeper who can chaperone, so your reputation won't suffer." Relief washed over Abigail. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "No need for that talk. Out here, we help each other survive." His voice was warm, despite its roughness. The West isn't kind to those who go it alone. As they rode, Abigail became aware of every point where their bodies touched his chest against her back, his arm around her waist, the strength in his thighs as he guided the horse. Despite her exhaustion and fear, she felt something unfamiliar stirring within her. Safety. The sun was beginning its descent when they crested a hill, revealing a modest but well-maintained ranch nestled in a valley below. A two-story house stood proudly near a barn and corral, with several outbuildings scattered nearby. Cattle grazed in the distance, and a stream glinted in the late afternoon light. "Welcome to Broken Spur," Zachariah said. "It's not much, but it's home." As they approached, a middle-aged woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her weathered face registered surprise at the sight of Abigail. "Mrs. Hollister," Zachariah called out as they reached the yard, "we have a guest in need of assistance." The woman hurried forward as Zachariah dismounted, then carefully helped Abigail down. Her legs, stiff from the long ride, nearly buckled beneath her. "Good heavens!" Mrs. Hollister exclaimed, taking in Abigail's disheveled appearance and bruised face. "What happened to the poor girl?" "She escaped a bad situation," Zachariah explained simply. "She needs a safe place to stay for a while." Mrs. Hollister's expression softened. "Of course. Come inside, dear. Let's get you cleaned up and fed." Abigail glanced gratefully at Zachariah. "Thank you again, Mr. Quincy." He tipped his hat. "Just Zach, please. And you're welcome as long as you need." As Mrs. Hollister led her toward the house, Abigail couldn't help looking back at the cowboy who had saved her. He was already leading his horse toward the barn, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. The next few days passed in a blur of rest and recovery. Mrs. Hollister, a widow who had worked for Zachariah for 5 years, treated Abigail's wounds with gentle hands and shared clothing that had belonged to her daughter, now married and living in Denver. Zachariah kept his distance, spending his days working with his small crew of ranch hands. Each evening, however, he would inquire about her well-being during supper, his blue eyes reflecting genuine concern. On the 4th day, Abigail ventured onto the front porch, breathing in the crisp morning air. Her body still ached, but the worst of her injuries were healing. She watched as Zachariah worked with a young horse in the corral, his movements confident and patient. "He's good with them wild ones," Mrs. Hollister commented, joining Abigail on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Abigail. "Been that way since I've known him, has a gentle hand, despite everything." "Everything?" Abigail questioned, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. Mrs. Hollister settled into a rocking chair. "Zach's seen his share of hardship, fought in the war, came back to find his parents' farm burned to the ground, worked cattle drives for years before saving enough to buy this place 3 years ago. He lives here alone? Besides you and the ranch hands, I mean." "He does." Mrs. Hollister gave her a knowing look. "Many local girls have set their caps for him, but he keeps to himself. Says he's married to this land." She paused. "Though I've never seen him bring home a stray before you." Abigail felt her cheeks warm. He was simply being kind. "Zach Quincy is many things hardworking, fair, stubborn as the day is long, but he's not impulsive. If he brought you here, he had his reasons." Before Abigail could respond, Zachariah released the horse from the corral and approached the house, removing his gloves. His shirt clung to his broad shoulders, damp with exertion, and his dark hair curled slightly at his neck. "Morning, ladies," he called, climbing the porch steps. "How are you feeling today, Miss Thornton?" "Much better, thank you," she replied. "And please, call me Abigail." A small smile curved his lips. "Abigail, then." He accepted a cup of coffee from Mrs. Hollister. "I'm riding into town for supplies today. Is there anything you need?" She hesitated. "I don't wish to be a burden." "You're not," he assured her. "Besides, you can't keep wearing Mrs. Hollister's daughter's clothes forever. They don't quite fit right. Abigail glanced down at the dress that hung loose on her frame. I have no money to pay for new things. Consider it an advance, he said. Mrs. Hollister mentioned you're handy with a needle. We could use help with mending and such around here, if you're willing to work for your keep until you decide your next steps. Hope blossomed in her chest. I would be very grateful for that arrangement. Mrs. Hollister cleared her throat. I'll write down what she needs, Zach. You men never get these things right. As the housekeeper disappeared inside, a moment of awkward silence fell between them. Thank you for not asking about before, Abigail finally said. Zachariah leaned against the porch railing, studying her face. Everyone has parts of their past they'd rather leave behind. You'll tell me if and when you're ready. Their eyes met, and something passed between them and understanding, a connection that needed no words. For the first time in her 20 years, Abigail felt truly seen. The moment was broken when one of the ranch hands called for Zachariah from the barn. He straightened, finishing his coffee in one swallow. Duty calls, he said with a small smile. I'll be back before sundown. As he walked away, Abigail found herself watching the confident set of his shoulders, the easy grace of his movements. Something unfamiliar stirred within her, something that felt dangerously like attraction. Days turned into weeks as Abigail settled into life at Broken Spur. She took over mending clothes, helped Mrs. Hollister with cooking and cleaning, and even learned to gather eggs from the cranky hens that ruled the coop. The bruises on her body faded, though the memories remained. Gradually, she shared pieces of her story with Zachariah during quiet evenings on the porch. She told him about growing up the daughter of a struggling shopkeeper in Kansas, about her mother's death from consumption when she was 12, about her father's desperate gambling that led to his crushing debt. He wasn't a bad man, she explained one evening as they watched the sun set. Just weak and broken after Mother died. When his heart gave out last winter, Mr. Wilkes came to collect. Said I was part of the estate. Zachariah's hands gripped his coffee mug so tightly his knuckles whitened. No court would uphold such a claim. There was no court in that small town, just Wilkes and his money and influence. She stared at the horizon. At first it was just housework. Then he started drinking more, and his hands started wandering. When I resisted, She trailed off, unable to continue. You don't have to say more, Zachariah said softly, his voice tight with controlled anger. The day you found me, he'd threatened to sell me to a brothel in Santa Fe if I didn't cooperate. When the wagon slowed, I knew it was my only chance. Zachariah was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the space between their chairs and tentatively covered her hand with his. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Abigail Thornton. His touch sent warmth spiraling through her. She turned her hand to lace her fingers with his, a bold move that surprised them both. I don't feel brave, just desperate. Sometimes they're the same thing. They sat in companionable silence until darkness fell completely, their hands still joined, neither willing to break the connection that felt increasingly precious. As summer progressed toward fall, Abigail found herself looking forward to these evening conversations. Zachariah gradually revealed his own past, his childhood in Missouri, the horrors he'd witnessed during the war, his years drifting afterward. I never thought I'd put down roots again, he admitted one evening. Then I saw this land, and something just felt right. It's beautiful here, Abigail agreed, gazing at the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. More so lately, he said quietly, his eyes on her face rather than the landscape. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. Their relationship had been changing, subtly lingering glances, brief touches, an awareness that crackled between them like electricity before a storm. Mrs. Hollister had noticed too. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, she commented one afternoon as they kneaded bread dough. And you're not much better, staring after him like that. Abigail blushed deeply. I don't know what you mean. The older woman laughed. Of course you don't. Just like I don't see you two holding hands on the porch when you think I've gone to bed. It's not proper, Abigail murmured, though her heart raced at the memory of Zachariah's calloused hand enveloping hers. Proper is for folks who've never known hardship, Mrs. Hollister said firmly. Life's too short and too hard out here to waste time with nonsense rules. If two people find something good, they should hold on to it with both hands. Despite the housekeeper's blessing, Abigail remained cautious. Her experience with Wilkes had taught her how vulnerable a woman alone could be. Even though she trusted Zachariah, the idea of depending completely on any man terrified her. The question of her future loomed larger as autumn approached. She had saved a small amount of money from the wages Zachariah insisted on paying her. Perhaps she could travel to Denver or even California, find work as a seamstress or shop girl. Yet each time she considered leaving, her heart constricted painfully. The thought of never seeing Zachariah again, of leaving the safety and peace she'd found at Broken Spur, felt increasingly unbearable. Her decision was forced one crisp September afternoon when she was alone in the house, Mrs. Hollister having gone to visit her sister in the nearby town. Abigail was hanging laundry when the sound of an approaching wagon made her pause. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized Jasper Wilkes on the driver's seat. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran for the house, but Wilkes had already seen her. He jumped down from the wagon with surprising agility for a man his size and blocked her path. Well, well, he sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey despite the early hour. Finally found you, my dear. Been asking questions all over the territory. Abigail backed away. Leave now, Mr. Wilkes. This is private property. You're my property, he spat, lunging forward to grab her arm. And I'm taking you back. Let go of me. She struggled against his grip, but he was much stronger. Not this time, he growled, dragging her toward his wagon. I paid good money for you, and you'll work it off one way or another. Terror gave Abigail strength she didn't know she possessed. She twisted violently and brought her knee up hard between his legs. Wilkes howled in pain, releasing her arm as he doubled over. She ran toward the barn, hoping to find one of the ranch hands, but Wilkes recovered quickly. He caught her hair, yanking her backward with such force that she cried out in pain. You'll pay for that, he snarled, raising his hand to strike her. The distinctive sound of a revolver being cocked froze them both. Take your hands off her. Zachariah's voice was colder than Abigail had ever heard it, devoid of its usual warmth. Wilkes turned slowly, still gripping Abigail's hair. Zachariah stood 20 paces away, his revolver aimed steadily at Wilkes's chest. Behind him were two of his ranch hands, both armed. This doesn't concern you, Cowboy, Wilkes said, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. This woman belongs to me. I have papers. Let her go, Zachariah repeated, taking a step closer. Or the buzzards will be picking at what's left of you by sundown. Something in his tone must have convinced Wilkes he was serious. He released Abigail's hair, shoving her away from him. She stumbled but kept her feet, moving quickly to Zachariah's side. Are you hurt? He asked her, never taking his eyes off Wilkes. No, she whispered, though her scalp stung fiercely. Good. He nodded to one of the ranch hands. Tom, escort Mr. Wilkes off our property. If he resists, you have my permission to shoot him. Tom, a grizzled man in his 50s, stepped forward with a grim smile. Be my pleasure, boss. You can't do this, Wilkes blustered. I have rights. Not here you don't, Zachariah cut him off. And if I ever see you near Miss Thornton again, I won't be as merciful. Tom, make sure he understands. As Tom marched Wilkes toward his wagon at gunpoint, Zachariah finally holstered his weapon and turned to Abigail. His face, which had been a mask of cold fury, softened with concern. Are you truly all right? He asked, his hands gentle as they cupped her face. The tenderness in his touch, the worry in his eyes, broke something inside her. Tears she'd been holding back for months spilled down her cheeks as she leaned into him. Without hesitation, his arms enfolded her, holding her securely against his chest. "I was so afraid," she admitted, her voice muffled against his shirt. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner," he murmured, his chin resting atop her head. "When I saw him grab you, I nearly—" He trailed off, but his arms tightened around her. They stood like that until Tom returned, reporting that Wilkes had been sent on his way with a clear understanding of what would happen if he returned. "Thank you, Tom," Zachariah said. "You and Jim take the rifle and keep watch at the North Ridge for a while, just in case." Once the men had gone, Zachariah led Abigail to the porch swing. They sat close together, his arms still around her shoulders, her head resting against him. "He found me," she said finally. "He could come back." "He won't," Zachariah assured her. "Men like Wilkes are cowards at heart. But if it would make you feel safer, we could notify the territorial marshal." She nodded, grateful for his understanding. Then, gathering her courage, she voiced the thought that had been growing in her mind for weeks. "I've been thinking about leaving." His body tensed beside her. "Leaving Broken Spur?" "I can't stay forever. I need to make my own way." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Zachariah was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Do you want to leave?" "No," she admitted, the truth rushing out before she could stop it. "That's what frightens me the most. I don't want to go." He shifted to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Then stay." "As what? Your housekeeper's assistant? Your charity case?" "As my wife." The words hung in the air between them. Abigail stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Your wife?" she echoed. His eyes never left hers, sincere and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I love you, Abigail. I think I started falling for you the moment I saw you standing in the dust, brave enough to run despite everything. These past months, getting to know you, seeing your strength and kindness. I know it's sudden, but nothing in my life has ever felt as right as you being here." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time from joy rather than fear. "I love you too," she whispered. "But marriage, are you certain?" "More certain than I've ever been about anything." He squeezed her hands gently. "I don't care what brought you to me, whether it was fate or chance or your own incredible courage. I just know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. If you'll have me." In answer, Abigail leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. It was her first kiss freely given, and it felt like coming home. His hands released hers to cradle her face as he kissed her back with tender passion. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" She smiled, happiness bubbling up inside her like a spring. "Yes, Zachariah Quincy, I will marry you." They were wed 2 weeks later in the small church in town, with Mrs. Hollister beaming proudly in the front pew and the ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best. Abigail wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, with wildflowers in her hair. As she spoke her vows, Abigail marveled at the journey that had brought her here. A desperate leap from a wagon had led to this moment standing beside a man who looked at her with such love it made her heart ache with joy. The celebration afterward at Broken Spur lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and more food than Abigail had seen in one place. As twilight deepened, Zachariah took her hand and led her away from the revelry, down to the stream that ran through their property. In the gathering darkness, he kissed her with a passion that made her tremble with anticipation. "Mrs. Quincy," he murmured against her lips, "have I told you today how much I love you?" "Yes," she laughed softly, "but I wouldn't mind hearing it again." "I love you," he said, kissing her between each word. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt it." Later that night, in the privacy of what was now their bedroom, he showed her how beautiful love could be between a man and a woman who truly cherished each other. Her fears melted away under his gentle, reverent touch, replaced by a passion she had never imagined possible. In the quiet aftermath, as they lay tangled together beneath the quilts, Abigail traced the outline of his face in the moonlight streaming through the window. "What are you thinking?" he asked, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm thinking about how close I came to never knowing this happiness," she admitted. "If I hadn't jumped from that wagon, if you hadn't been riding by at that exact moment." "But you did, and I was," he reminded her. "Some things are meant to be, Abigail. I believe we were meant to find each other." She nestled closer to him, savoring the solid warmth of his body against hers. "I believe that too." The years that followed proved the truth of their love. Broken Spur prospered under their joint care, growing from a modest ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. Zachariah's fair dealings and Abigail's sharp mind for business earned them respect throughout the region. The following spring, they welcomed their first child, a daughter with Zachariah's blue eyes and Abigail's determined spirit. 2 sons followed in the years after, filling their home with laughter and chaos. Jasper Wilkes never darkened their doorstep again, having moved on to California after hearing rumors that the territorial marshal was investigating his business practices. The fear that had shadowed Abigail's early months at Broken Spur faded completely, replaced by a confidence born of love and security. On their 10th anniversary, Zachariah surprised her with a gift, the deed to the land where he had found her that fateful day. "Why?" she asked, puzzled by the seemingly random parcel. He smiled, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Because that spot is sacred to me. It's where our story began." Tears filled her eyes as she turned in his embrace to face him. At 30, she was more beautiful to him than ever, her face reflecting the happiness and peace she had found. "You saved me that day," she said softly. He shook his head. "No, my love. You saved yourself when you jumped from that wagon. I was just lucky enough to catch you." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Abigail thought about how far she had come from that desperate young woman fleeing for her life. The journey had been unpredictable, and at times frightening. But it had led her here to this man, these children, this life built on love and respect. She had jumped from a wagon to escape a beating, and a cowboy had caught her and said, "You're safe now." It was a promise Zachariah Quincy had kept every day since, and one Abigail knew would endure for all the days to come.